It's my pleasure to have Mariana Kannengiesser with me today. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Mariana, and she's going to speak with us in English, and English is her second language, so it's very good of her to attempt to speak to me in English. Mariana and I have a very long collegial connection, as well as a close friendship, and we've been working on joint collaborative cooperative projects for some time. One of which of them is the Togetherment projects, and also the Cat Islands, and I'm sure Mariana will be happy to talk about, just briefly introduce both of those two projects, and any other worthy and notable projects that you and I have been working on. Mariana, I'd welcome you to introduce that, and if you could talk a little bit about your academic background as a doctor, and how you've come to this place through your own trauma-based journey and all of those things. So it's difficult because I already know your story very well, because I know you very well, but I'd like you to introduce yourself to other people.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the Congress. My name is Marie-Anne Kannengiesser. I'm originally born in Germany, but I never felt German. My heart always was placed in Austria. So sooner or later, I moved to Austria, where I was married. And after that marriage falling apart, I just did not know where to go. So I looked very deep inside and just packed my car with the necessary things, answered to a call from Greece, where there was a free position to guide a seminar center through the winter, and did drive to Greece. And the moment I passed by the islands on the ferry and did see the blue sky with the blue sea and all those 50 shades of blue, I knew this is home. This is Homa. This is where my heart resides. And so I went to the Peloponnese, where I'm living now, on the west side, looking to the island of Zakynthos and looking to Italy. Having the pleasure to see the sunset every night. Sunset over the sea, which has always been the dream of my life since I was a child. So I can say, by trusting the divine, I finally came home. But in between, there have been heaps of losses. Heaps and heaps of losses and decisions. And so I made that my profession, guiding people through losses and making them see the art of the divine in it and the pleasure in it. I did write a book about that. Can show you the book. I'm very proud of it. Yes, and here where I'm situated now, I have a cat island, which means I waited for cats to come. They come to persons they like, and they live with me. I have at the moment 10 cats who are living with me. And now people are coming. I have two people, a couple who are living with me now because they were stranded in Greece with the lockdown we had when all the borders closed. And from my little hill here in Greece, I'm looking on all what is happening in the world. And we talked about that. Since the mid of February, I really felt bad, because I had the notion that there was happening something which I had in my dreams as a little child. And those dreams have been no pleasure. Is this enough? Oh, I should say I'm a trained veterinarian, but I don't work as a veterinarian anymore. I have been a naturopath and a homeopath all my life.
So what led you to stop being a veterinarian? That would be useful for people to get a sense of.
Okay, so this was my first real collision with the state and the chambers. I'm an opponent to vaccination, and I openly discussed that. I even had, maybe people can remember the black tongue disease and the compulsory vaccination in Austria and Germany. And I have been against that. The farmers did call me to step up and openly discuss it with the veterinarian director who signed that law. And that veterinarian director, in that open discussion, how can I tell that best? He couldn't cope with my arguments. And in the end, he had to say, I signed it because I wanted to.
Oh dear. Yeah, goodness me.
And 2 days after that, the chamber of the normal doctors and the chamber of the veterinarian doctors called me that I'm not anymore allowed to call myself a vet because my opinion is not what the chambers want me to say.
Okay.
Since then, I'm a person who studied veterinary science. I still have my license because I complied. On my card, there's now author and not veterinarian anymore. But this is how things then went.
So you were what we would have called in the West a conscientious objector. You went with your conscience and you objected to the pattern of what they were doing and the law that they were putting in place. And there's a big mirror here, Marianne, with you know, what you've experienced there with your veterinary career and you know, how you're placed now, because you know, in our conversations you are sitting in a place where you no longer wish to actually be a part of, you know, a pattern of behaviour, once again involving vaccines, but many other things as well, behaviours that the government are instituting. So I'd like you to, if you could, I would like to come back to that and just talk about what you're seeing there. But I think for people viewing this, I think it would be really interesting for them outside of Germany and Austria and so on, so outside of the German-speaking world, for people to get a bit of a sense of what it's like, you know, what the experience is for a German-born person in terms of the political changes and, you know, the inevitable comparisons to the time before the Second World War. So I just wonder if you could just draw some parallels, because I'm pretty sure people don't quite realize that dread, that feeling of dread that German-speaking people have for this.
Yeah, in fact, not all German-speaking people have that. Intellectuals have that. Let's say in 1932, 1931, intellectuals that had a political overview left Germany because they saw what would be coming. They saw how the Weimar Republic would end. So they did go to other European countries, they did go to the US and try to survive somehow. And other ones stayed because they didn't believe that things could get so bad so quickly. And in the beginning of the year 1933, Hitler planned his takeover of the government. And maybe the historical knowledge in people is not good enough to know that he managed to do that within 6 weeks. He, in reality, managed it from February to March. I guess just before Easter, he had the whole takeover done, including the drop of the parliament, so that he could institute any law he wanted, and from there he did go. And as you said, when we had the Wuhan cases, I did watch closely in the news in December. I did watch how they did go for the mass media, how they did go for the anxiety. And from a medical point of view, I can understand what a coronavirus infection is. And I couldn't believe what I did see. This falling down of people seemed to be either induced or having another background. So I was quite close in watching all the corona cases come to Germany, to Austria, seeing what was planned here. And it has been, when they first announced that togetherness of more than 1,000 people were not allowed anymore, and that people couldn't go to the football stadium and things like that, that I said, you will see they're going for mass vaccination and they will have installed totalitarianism within 2 months. And nobody believed me. But it was close to see that all the principles, from the propaganda to the actions that were installed in the Weimar Republic, would be redone. And they first went for the right of demonstration. And from there, within 2 weeks, we had further restrictions down to, I guess, 20 people. In the mid of March, we had the closing of all borders. And now it's nearly mid of April. We are down to a situation where we can say we lost the parliament. Today I heard that the first lawyer who went against the state and did put all her knowledge into protect democracy was deprived of her license. And maybe people do not know, if you are in Serbia now and you tested positive, you are drawn out of your family by law of the state and put into a lazaret with other 3,000 people. So we have those concentration camps on another point of view again.
Absolutely. It's just a different kind of concentration camp. That's exactly right.
And this all was installed within 6 weeks, the same time Hitler took in 1933. And it's amazing for me, amazing, that the whole globe participates, and the whole globe may not understand what is happening here. It's first done in Germany and Austria and Italy and Spain, but it will go further. You're not safe on the other side of the planet.
Well, far from it. You know, we're experiencing a similar timeline, maybe a few weeks behind what you're talking about in Germany, but already the civil liberties and the freedoms are dramatically reduced, and they're passing laws one after the other to take away liberty. So most people are not really noticing, because they think, well, you know, it wouldn't happen to me. This is not about me. You know, I'm a good person. I'm social distancing. I'm making sure that I don't pass on a disease and all these things. But very, very few people are recognizing the actual structural legal changes which are going on, which is the really important stuff. What I am noticing, Ayana, I'm interested to hear your view from Europe, but what I'm noticing amongst colleagues here in Australia is that they're becoming worried that their Facebook accounts are being censored and their YouTube accounts are being censored. That would be probably the only thing that they're actually grasping, that their rights are being predated upon. So something is insignificant. You know, we can all live without Facebook, we can all live without YouTube, but to have a law that allows a person to be taken out of a family, which they passed the same law here in Australia. It's the same thing. So a sick child can be taken out of the house and against your will. So, and you have no rights. There's no right of redress in this. Anyway, so it's not that dissimilar. And it's just,
but see what happened to democracy.
Yeah.
We don't have it anymore. We don't have our human rights anymore. And what I see is a scheme of totalitarianism installed in the whole world, and at the same time I see an opportunity in a lot of people to say no. I won't participate. I understand what is happening. I just don't participate.
So there's an opportunity, but they're not wanting to make a change. Which, you know, we come back to one of Mariana's famous sayings, as she says, "There's no change without change." So tell us what that means. So what are you seeing amongst people?
If you want to have change, you have to drop what you had before. And in most cases, you won't have anything in exchange. So the real question is, are you able to drop what you had without having anything new in your hands and trust the divine that what is going to happen will be good, will be the best for you? So realizing we have political constructs we don't want to have, realizing we have financial constructs we don't want to have, realizing we have health constructs we don't want to have, we have to drop them without having anything else at our hands at the moment. But that's the only way.
So this is what you would call a quantum shift. It's you're jumping from somewhere without any knowledge of where you're going to jump to, but having some trust in that process. I wonder if you could offer some guidance to people. How do people get to a state where, you know, particularly given the level of anxiety and fear that's operating in the environment, how do people jump out of this? What do they do to actually make that jump?
First, I would recommend to write down what your situation is, your actual situation. And if you write it down, you will realize that you don't want to have it. Then you should confront your fears and see whether one or two of them are real because it's danger to the body, or whether they are all delusional, only in your mind. If they are only in your mind, invite them for a cup of tea and get rid of them. Then you will realize that you're badly angry. So invite the rage, confront it, say, yes, it's me, though I shouldn't. And go into communication with all you are angry about and all people you're angry about. Communicate. That's the solution. And most people get sad and depressed because they see if they think they are the one and only. What shall we do? What can we do? Nothing against the state. So you will get sad and feel deprived of your life. And the only possibility to cope with that is letting go of what is already past. If you don't have much freedom anymore, don't hang on it. It's past. Go forward to get it again. So we have a lot of emotional stuff to cope with. And after that is done, you have a lot of intellectual, mental stuff to cope with. And having done all that, having thought about all the righteousness and what can I say else, all the injuries you had in your life, you may come to a point where you say, it's all nonsense. All this thinking and all this feeling didn't bring me further. And then you have to make a decision, whether you trust or whether you doubt. If you can trust the divine, you will find a way.
So I'd just like you to be very clear here for our listeners. So you go through all of these steps, then they lead you up to the point where you could choose at that point to make a jump into the unknown. Mm-hmm. So we've got a lot of steps under our belt at this point, haven't we? We've got many things that we've actually achieved. And so we've seen where we were and we've decided we don't like it. We realised that we're angry about the fact that our freedoms have been taken away or that we've been forced into the situation, but that there's nothing much that we can do about that. And you've addressed the emotional climate with the depression and the need to control and all of those sorts of things. So we've gone down a lot of steps, haven't we?
Yeah.
There are many steps there, and the feeling I have having this or hearing you sort of identify it in such a crystal clear way there is that we should probably write this up actually to help people so that there's some guidance around these steps. Okay, so we should do that.
Actually, in German language, I did it.
Right. Okay. I should get busy translating it from German.
Yeah. As I said, it's time to learn that language.
Okay, very good. Well, that might not happen by tomorrow. So
yes, we can translate. It's no problem. It's only 100 pages. It's down to the point.
Okay.
Not much talking.
So we're at this point. We've done a lot of work. We've done a lot of steps here, and we're feeling a bit stronger, aren't we, at that point? So we've done those things that we actually feel a lot more stronger, a lot more coherent, and then we realize that we can't have the change without really changing. So now we are at the point where we need to change. Preparation's done, we need to change. And what you're advocating here is that the change has to be quantum, which means that you have to leave the ground. Mm-hmm. So you're no longer touching the ground, you're now jumping to another level completely, from which there'll be no connection from what's behind. What's behind will no longer exist. So tell me about that quantum jump.
If we take the actual example that we see in that scenario, the states will go for mass vaccination and won't give you back your right to travel without being submitted to that vaccination. You can either do the vaccination and probably be contaminated very badly, maybe with chips, maybe with an actual virus that is killing. We had all these things before. Or you are going to a self-sufficient life where you say, I'm sufficient in myself, I can support myself, I'm in a tiny house, I can grow my things, and I don't need to travel. I'm traveling in my mind, and I'm not participating. And if enough people would do that, it just would break down. We could dance Sirtaki and see it break down and see how beautifully it breaks down. But it needs the courage that Gandhi taught us. Do not participate. Do not support it. There's a passive, very peaceful way of standing up, which is definitely not participating in totalitarianism, which means not supporting the government, not supporting dissidents being locked away, not supporting denunciation and conspiracy in any form, and always openly say what you see.
Okay, so you're really talking about a non-violent approach here. But a non-violent approach with a lot of strength, like you've come to a position where you are clear about what things mean to yourself. So it's a very stable, grounded earth position that you've found yourself in, and from here you're prepared to stand and to non-violently actually stand, where you are. If somebody is living in a high-rise building or in the center of a city, even if it's in a small apartment block or something, how do they go about being self-sufficient?
It's time to leave.
To leave.
You have to make the decision that it is time to leave. It's the times to live in towns are over. Towns are can be isolated, suppressed, and regulated very easy. Participants in the hills cannot. Or partisans in the hills cannot be controlled. So go into the hills. Go into the outskirts, go into the bushes in Australia.
Yeah,
Make
well,
it difficult for them. Disseminate, not congregate. But in disseminating, form communities, self-sufficient communities where you are stable. And connect those communities to help each other. The only chance we have is to build a net within and watch what they constructed collapse. We have one thing that is definitely and clearly in advantage of us. That means that the times of totalitarianism on a higher scales are over. This is done. Hierarchy on the evolutionary point of humanity is over. So is any kind of totalitarianism. So if we can survive it, if we just have 10 to 20 years, it will collapse.
Okay, so what you're looking at is that a propped up system which is based on totalitarianism, which is clearly what we're heading for politically, is unstable in itself and won't actually manage to remain. We've had totalitarian type of states, like communist regimes last century for sure were in that totalitarian thing. But the freedoms, the so-called freedoms in the West, which may have disguised an element of totalitarian behavior in any case, or certainly the intention of it, it would appear that we've been blindfolded to what was really happening. We've been blindfolded.
Definitely. People were educated in a way to drop any form of self-responsibility, be it at the doctor's desk, be it politically, be it in regards of self-sustaining life. They all were consumed by the products we could buy. They drowned into gaming. They did move away from themselves. And if you do that, it's quite easy to take over and enslave you. But if you go back to yourself, to your sovereignty as a being, with all the responsibility, you can't just take decisions and go for yourself. Open your eyes wide, see what's happening, decide, and act.
Okay. I would like to take a slight diversion here to reinforce the point that you're making here, and just talk a little bit about the very beginning steps that you've been making with your togethernment there in Greece, and just talk about like the very beginning, very first hurdles that you have to jump. It's like jumping over a hurdle. So, when you and I...
The very first hurdle I had was when my husband said, well, divorce is okay, but he wants to have everything. I can go with 2 suitcases and will have nothing but my car. And it took me a few months to comply and to let go of any possession. That was definitely the first hurdle. Get rid of what you don't need and what only binds you, locks you down to constructs of duty and obligation. That's the first hurdle. Then try to find where you belong to. Is the country where you're living in, at the moment that you have no freedom of choice, but is the area you're living in the right area? Or is there something that feels more home? Take time, get rid of obligations, so that you have time to meditate and come back to yourself, to feel yourself again. Stop reading too much, stop watching TV, look inside. See what you find there and then look outside again. Drop the filters. And then connect and reach out to like-minded people. And if you can't find them the first moment, trust that they will come. They will find you. Just as Ike and Sandra found me, because they had not much of a chance. You remember they came to Petsit while I was in Austria in January. And when they came back, they just didn't feel too good and didn't want to drive, so they stayed a bit. Then they helped in renovating the house nearby. And then there came the lockdown and they had to stay. And now they're here. And we started a togetherment and had the glorious and grand opportunity to start a togetherment with 3 people who are in an awakening state and are aware that hierarchy is not the solution. And we tried for anarchy, to live together without rules, but to really have a look on what are the needs of each other. And just to get a simple thing. In the afternoon, very, very often, Ike just makes a coffee, while Sandra already has ready some little cookies, which she baked up front. And I'm doing a salad for Sandra because she's allergic to cookies. And so everybody has something, and it's all a gift, and no pressure on one person. And experiencing that is second to none.
So the key element in here is that your thought process is, how can I be responsible for myself? Mm-hmm. So what is it that I can be, how can I be responsible for myself, and to implement those changes within. And then naturally what comes out of that is that your thoughts go to, what are the needs of the people around me. And I remember, all those years ago when we started formulating, the ways that we could work with togetherness, we talked about the question you could ask somebody when you get up in the morning and say, well, what is it that I can do today to help you on your journey? And, we're talking about an inner journey here. So in other words, what can I do to help you, sort of make a step in what you're trying to do? And it's an interesting question. And the philosophy that sits in behind all of that is particularly interesting. Where I live here, I'm living in a small togetherment with another couple and myself and their children. And so I'm experiencing, many of these things. And the very first thing that I do every day, in memory of what we talked about all those years ago, is I write to them and I say, what can I do to help today? And it's always with that intention that to assist the person, in their self-designed path, whatever their path is themselves. So I'm not trying to insist on my version of what they should be doing. So here we go. We've got 2 people on this call at the moment, and we're both actually in the middle of this experiment, how that would work. And I'm sure you'll agree that working with 3 people, and in my case is another 3 children, but in your case it's 10 cats. But it doesn't need to be a lot more complicated than that for it to be stretching for that learning to be available, for the learning to be available.
For the learning, it's enough, and you have to give it the possibility to grow, and just have the trust that within time there will be other people coming and associate. And it's like you have to think of it like a homeostasis. So if you add something new in, the whole system will take a bit of time to readjust. And once it's running again, others can come. And so it will grow. Grow by learning.
Well, that's the experience, all right? That's what we're deeply involved in at the moment. So tell me, what we're referring to here is small groups of people who are choosing to jump out of this hierarchical structure and to work in some kind of flat type of structure in terms of an organisation and how we're caring for one another. So there's no bosses, there's no slaves, there's no workers. Everybody's just there on an equal, everybody's got a voice and everybody's voice is equal, and we're trying to understand what each other needs. Tell me about what you're observing in the wider community, you know, in comparison. So like with the pandemic, what's happening in the wider community? Is there more of a splitting of the ways between people who are trying to, you know, go down these kinds of paths that we're talking about and the rest of the people? Or are you seeing that everybody's trying to move? Or what are you seeing?
Here in Greece, we have a highly hierarchical structure. So as the pressure comes upon people, they reside in their families. Most of the people here in my area have a little farm in behind. Maybe the children live in the city and work in the city, have a cafe, but at least the grandparents will have a farm in the hills. So at the moment, they are restructuring in their families, trying to get hold of the resources of the grandparents or the parents. And in the families support the families, like it is in Eastern countries. So we are going back to a highly hierarchical, patriarchal structure here in this country. And we will see whether this will prevail or not.
Okay. So the average people are resorting to like an almost more hierarchical, or there's less option, seemingly less option for them to jump.
Yes, but it is, let's say it's an Eastern approach of patriarchy, so it's more about caring for the children. See that they have enough to eat and clothing and something to live in. It's a lot about benevolent care.
Okay.
But of course, you cannot contradict the patriarch.
No, that's very, very true. Very
so
true.
If the patriarch says, this is your house, then this is your house.
Yeah.
But you have a house.
In amongst the patriarchal structures that you're seeing around you, what is the view of the people? I know you're not necessarily particularly close to the community, but is there a feeling that these patriarchal groups, so we've got family groups with a strong patriarch, is there a feeling that they support the strong government, or is there a feeling that they are in a way actually sort of becoming self-governing?
Self-governing.
Okay.
It's the self-sufficient structure. And people here in Greece are waiting for things to collapse. They won't survive the lockdown longer than 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. We already have quite rich people who had hotels and many tavernas who know that their lifetime work is going down and they're going to be bankrupt the next months. I tried to interview one of them. They're losing lifetime work now.
Yeah.
And maybe generations of work. The only thing, or the only way to come over the next times here in Greece is if you have the opportunity to grow your things yourself. Mm-hmm. Or to get in exchange with farmers. This is the only possibility. Or other things are going to break down.
Given the intentions of the governments and so on to go to a cashless society, so to actually control cash, which almost all governments around the world are talking about. So like it's on the agenda for almost every government, certainly Western governments anyway. you know, what you're talking about is with this retreating into these patriarchal self-governing groups, you know, and they're tiny groups, they're just a family that we're talking about here. What does that do to the aspirations of the governments and large business to control money? What's happening there?
Oh, we already had this in the year of 2008 when we had all the breakdown here in Greece. That slowly by slowly the government went to cashless society. It's quite usual to pay even a €5 bill with your card here. And when I first came to Greece, it was quite usual that you did go to the ATM and there was nothing in. And after the third ATM, you did give up and pay with your card. If there was money on it.
But what you're seeing there in Greece is that there's a direct trend. There's a direct trend towards a cashless society. But
Yeah.
what you're talking about there, sorry.
On my opinion, Greece was the test country for going to that kind of society. They couldn't break the cycle because here in Greece we have another currency, and that is olive oil. This is an internal community currency.
Okay. So people are literally trading services and trading goods based on the value of olive oil. So olive oil is the gold standard of Greece. That's
yes, definitely, definitely.
Interesting.
And it's more appreciated than gold. Good olive oil here is quality of life. And if you have good olive oil, what else do you need here in Greece? You have your tomatoes, you have your cucumbers, you have your diasmos, which is some kind of herbs, and you have your jota, you know.
Yeah.
And you have your lemons and a bit of cheese from the neighbor, and everything is good. You're baking your bread if you want it.
Yeah.
What else do you need? A bit of wine.
Which you can trade for olive oil.
Which you could trade for olive oil, no problem.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess for young people, like, you know, if there's younger people who don't own a home, or if they're disconnected from their family, there will be issues in that Greek society. If people are disconnected from family holdings that are in the mountains or on the hills, that will be an issue. And it'll be interesting to see whether a country like Australia, where there's a lot of open land, a lot of farmland, a lot of rural areas that people could migrate to in the event of society breaking down in the cities. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes of that. But there's no question that Greece is a long way down a track. If that is the track, then Greece is already a long way down that track. And I suspect much of Asia is in the same situation.
I talked with a cleaning woman yesterday, and she said, till we here on this west side of the Peloponnese will feel what is happening worldwide now, it will take about 15 months. It will take maybe till the next olive harvest, which will be quite bad because this year was so good. And it has a every 2 years cycle of having good olive oil. Mm-hmm. So in 12 months, it's going to become a bit more serious here.
As a German national, well, you're an Austrian national, aren't you? Anyway,
no, not German. I was born quite on the border. So you can say my passport is here and my heart is there.
Okay, no, fair enough. I'm just interested in how the Greek people actually welcome you. So, like, are you seen as an outsider, or are you welcome?
So in Greece, we had a lot of problem from the Second World War, where Hitler and all what that happened here made very bad things in killing people, killing whole villages. And this sits deep in people. But the Greek mind is a mind that is quite open and philosophic. So if you behave good and you just blend in, then they very open, very friendly. But they won't let you close.
Okay.
So I'm a foreigner in this village. But if the water bill is coming, the agent doesn't come up the hill to me. My bill is in somewhere in the village, and when I drive by, people come and give me the bill.
Okay.
And ask about the cat and how I am, and then I say, I'm good, and how's your dog? And then I drive up the hill. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a kind of connection, but there's still memory. Why I'm asking about that is that, what we're seeing here in Australia is that is anybody that's doing anything a bit different, or is a bit different, or wanting to behave in some other way, they're very criticized. People are being separated off. It's like anybody that's concerned or has a different opinion. And so I'm just very interested in a country where it's already further down a track, how they're actually managing difference, how they're managing, those sorts of things. Because it's horrible here. They are very victimizing for anybody that's wanting to think different.
It's not here. It's not here. It's the Greek mind is philosophical and peaceful in its own standing for thousands of years. So if you behave, if you try to speak a bit of Greece or Greek language, it's okay. If you know what to eat, if you don't disturb any of the religious things. I'm just an old crazy woman living up the hill with cats doing online business. That's it.
And there's that level of acceptance of the fact that you're quite different, because you are a crazy cat lady living up on the hill. Yeah.
But of course, I'm doing online business, so I still have a bit of money, and people can come here to work, and that is good.
Okay. Yeah. No, very, very good. So, Marianne, you've given us really a large hint about what you would recommend, and that is for people to become solid in themselves, and from that place of being solid to be prepared to make such a big jump that they leave the ground and leave everything behind them where there's no going back to it. So you've already given that advice. What other advice would you give for people so that they, well, I guess to even know to want to do that?
The question is, can you live a simple life, and are you prepared to go to a life where you don't have much consume mentality left? As long as you are linked to that, you can be manipulated. If you drop that, you're self-sufficient. So if you want to really free yourself from your possessions to the point of nothing, quite nothing. And that nothing that is left, share it. So that you get rid of the scheme of possession. Mm-hmm. And this is half of the way. The rest will come.
If we have somebody who owns a home and they, are connected to their home, what do they do about that? How do they manage to somehow inside themselves become non-attached to those possessions? How does that work?
Share. if you have a house and there's enough space, invite some person who doesn't have a home and just see whether that person can help you do the garden or help you in whatever. Begin to share.
Okay. Well, these are important steps. They may sound incredibly simple, but there's nothing too simple about this, really.
I told you the first moment Sandra did take my pickup to drive to the supermarket, I nearly collapsed. I'm more attached to a car than a woman usually is, because I always had cars, and as a vet, you know, my Jeep or my pickup was always very important to me. A symbol of freedom. And she needed to go shopping, and she did take the car. And it's absolutely okay for her to do it. But the first moment she did take my car. And I had to sit down in the chair and rethink what I was thinking here. And letting go the idea of that is my car. We are living in a togetherment now. It's our car, even if I pay for it. Even if I pay the insurance, it's our car.
Well, you remind me of my father, and he talked about charity. And somebody asked him once, they said, how do I know that I'm giving enough charity? And he said, is it hurting yet? So that's what you're talking about, is that you have to give up to the point where you're actually feeling the pain, and then you know that you're actually in the experience. That's when you know you're in the experience. Yeah. Okay. Mariana, I wonder if you've got anything else that you'd like to offer to people.
If you want to go for togetherness or for freeing yourself, start with meditation. Start with daily meditation and daily insight. Rethink your day, and at the end of the day, think about what you could have done better. Not to blame yourself, but to give yourself the opportunity to rise. Rethink things, and next day just do it better. And final words I would say is wake up, see what's happening on the planet, and take a decision. And never ever make anybody press you in a way that you go back to violence. This is not the way.
Well, thank you, Mariana. It's been a wonderful conversation. You know, I won't take away from the experience. It's been wonderful, and you know, you're touching on some very, very deep components here of you know, what's coming out of this experience, and you're forecasting you know, a level of change that will be surprising, I think, to many people listening. Of course, most people think they're just going to go back to what was there before, and that's not the message that you're giving. Is that you're identifying that really what's behind is behind, and what's in the future is in the future. So thank you, and obviously people can make contact with you. We'll undoubtedly Ika, you know, who's part of your Togetherment there, he'll be making you up a web page, or you'll be doing it yourself or whatever, because we are cooperating and collaborating across the globe here in this project. And but I think it's really important that people can reach to you, because some of the things that you're talking about are, you know, they're seemingly so foreign, you know, like the idea of give up your possessions, you know, give up the attachments to your possessions, at least anyway. That's such a very foreign thing for people, and they may wish to actually touch with you, you know, for guidance and support around those things.
If somebody has problems and wants to talk about that, you're welcome.
Okay, well, thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
So be it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.